You're listening to the We Are Libertarians Network. Learn more at wearelibertarians.com. Welcome to Miranda's World. This is a podcast about the lovely Maranda Barnett, and I am your host, Chris Spangle. I will be delving deep into the mind of Maranda. As Greg Lynn said, there is no diagnostic tool on the planet that can diagnose Maranda. Not diagnose, because that says that you might have something wrong with you.
Probably true.
Maranda is a breakout star of We Are Libertarians. You came on the podcast, and you destroyed it.
It's been nothing but up since then.
Really?
My star is growing.
How many friend requests did you get from coming on that episode?
I don't know, probably over 100 for sure. My Snapchat is blowing up, my Facebook's blowing. I had to change settings also to allow people to follow me, so now I'm risking people I can't stand seeing all my awesomeness. But that's okay.
Well, Maranda is a personality for sure.
Many personalities.
Many personalities. And, after the response, I just said, listen, we've got to do a podcast. And I've been after you to do a podcast with me for months now.
I know. I want to. I'm just like...
Scoot that mic close to you.
I always want to. I'm just such a all over the place, like, and also I'm like, you got to square me down to a time. If you pin me down, then I can. But if you keep leaving it up to me, I'm just like, I'm always busy.
Yeah.
So I stay busy. It's like I get bored. So it's like, I'm always finding something else to do.
The process to get you to show up is a multi-day process. You give a week's notice.
Yeah.
Then you follow up every day. And then you have to give a 2-hour warning.
Oh, yeah.
So you remember.
Oh, for sure. Oh, because I forget also, just because with all the random things that I'm running around doing, it's so crazy. I'm always busy doing absolutely nothing. Swear to God.
So you just never lay around and just do nothing and veg? I
mean, I do for a short time. I can't. My attention span's just not there. Like I can, but I'm doing stuff. If I'm doing that, I'm actually cleaning my house.
Right.
I'll clean something and then I deserve a break.
You have the cleanest place I've ever seen. I've seen it on Snapchat.
Oh gosh. Well, thanks. Because I would never take a photo when it's dirty. But it is clean, but then it's dirty. So it's like. But because I am so OCD, so when I start, I'm clearing everything out. I'm cleaning it top to bottom, wiping everything down, putting everything back. It's like I do it very thorough. I might have a few issues with that.
OCD tendencies.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start with the basics of Maranda. Let's get deep. Let's set the platform here. And so basically, how this is going to go is it's just going to be a conversation with Maranda and I, or whoever she wants to invite. And come and talk about her life, what she's up to, because nobody has more fascinating stories than Maranda. Greg and I know a lot of people and have heard a lot of stuff, and we sat before that podcast mesmerized by Maranda for 45 minutes before we started recording.
We did have quite the convo before it started.
Yeah, and so we won't get into that particular story today, maybe, but there are, oh my gosh, you are something else.
I know. It's like I'm so multifaceted. There's so many stories. It's like, where do you start?
Right.
My life, that's what I tell people when I tell them I do stand-up. They're like, oh, wow. Like, do you do jokes? And I'm like, no, I don't, actually. I tell stories about my shit show life. And they're just then they just look at me so confused. I'm like, no, it's cool. It's fun.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, it's just always interesting because nothing just goes as planned. Nothing just is a very very whatever, simple task. I've completed it. It's like nothing goes over smooth. It's a ruckus.
Right.
Every time.
There's always a ruckus.
I am a ruckus.
So where did you grow up? Are you from Indiana?
Yeah, I'm from Indiana. I grew up in Indianapolis on the west side. Excuse me, that bunny bait and giving me some trouble. Wow. So I grew up over right by the track, but not in Speedway. So in the bad neighborhood area.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't. I mean, honestly, what I remember, obviously, it wasn't great. It wasn't like the suburbs or anything, but at the same time, our neighborhood was mostly like older people, and then some teenage kids my age, so they had parents, whatever, but just seemed like a quieter neighborhood. But if you went to the next a block down or whatever, past Tibbs Avenue, than you were in Hallville. And I mean, I don't know. My grandmother was always like, you can't go past Tibbs. And I was just like, why not? And then one time I did, because I had a friend that lived over there, and I went to her house.
Yeah.
I was scared, and I don't get scared. Like, I was like, oh shit, that's what she was talking about.
Did you get in a lot of fights? Were you a fighter?
I got in a lot of fights in middle school because, again, there was just like, I guess, a little bit more psychology to it for me, because I honestly, I was kind of quiet and shy, and then
Really?
and probably like around 6th grade, yeah. But I loved like Clueless, and I was just like a good like sweet kid, you know. But I was cute, and the girls and the boys, but the girls mostly were very mean to me, and because I let them see that it bothered me, obviously,
right.
But like they would just call me fat and ugly, and I was like 98 pounds. So I mean, it's so silly, right?
Right, but
and
98 pounds at like 7th grade is not that much, right?
No,
So
I was tiny. I mean, I was, yeah, exactly. I was tiny, but they knew that I cared, and so they just would say mean things to me. And so come 7th grade, I started wearing makeup, and I was dyeing my hair, and I was a little thought.
Did you have boobs by then?
Oh, hell no. I didn't get those till 2 years ago. Not even through my pregnancy. But no. So, yeah, I mean, so I would get in fights, but it was just more so at that point, just like a little white trash ratchet thing between me and the neighborhood girls. And it kept me getting suspended, so then I didn't have to go to school, and I didn't have, a parenting system. So then I would just hang out at home and sleep and watch my soaps.
At what grade is this? How old are you?
7th and 8th grade.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
So you were headed down the wrong path, as they say.
Yeah. I would just start fights just to do it at that point.
Really?
once it happened a few times, then I saw how cool it was. Like that, I really didn't get in any trouble, and like, oh shit, like I'm gonna do that again.
Yeah.
But then I'm surprised more people didn't really completely kick my ass. Guessing from the neighborhood I did come from and the neighborhoods around there's some pretty like fighting type girls, if you will.
Right.
But I'm more of like your Clueless, Confessions of a Teenage Drama Queen.
You have a Valley Girl vibe to you.
Yeah. I mean, I don't put this raccoon in a corner because you may come out with no eyes. But like, that's just it. I don't know. I'm more mouth than anything as far as like what I'm going to initiate or, whatever. Now I would defend myself, and people would be surprised and probably wish they hadn't done it. But aside from that, I just, I don't know. It's so funny. I'm in the middle with it. Like that's not me. I'm not like a real ghetto, like, I'm going to fight you. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't prove anything. And I'm more opportunistic and narcissistic and about what's good for me than that.
Yeah.
Because going to jail, that's one thing I don't ever want to do. So I don't fight as like an adult.
You aren't the type that has like this, defend your honor. You're just like, I don't have any shame anyways. I have no honor to defend.
You don't know me anyway. Or if, you know what I mean? The things that anybody knows, if it happened, it happened. I have no problem with that. It is what it is. Because the bottom line is, as you get older, you learn that everybody is the same way. We all have done things that we're not great. We're not proud of them.
Sure.
But they've shaped us, and it's just part of life. Like, if you met a perfect person, I would want to know who that is.
Yeah. Well, you're looking at him.
Well, Matt, if you could meet one, because you are that perfect,
right. Yes.
But
obviously.
Could they just lick my hand?
Oh,
hello.
Mittens is biting you. We're taking video of this. I should have the video edited and posted, but yeah, she's not going to stop. So
I will bite your cat. No, I won't.
Do it.
Because it gets hair in my mouth. Oh, come on
we
now.
can get hair in your mouth.
That's the only problem. That's why I'm scared to bite an animal that bites me because I don't want the hair.
She's just looking. She just wants to look. Yeah.
Oh yeah, she's playing.
So you mentioned your grandma raised you.
Yeah. I lived with my grandparents, so it's the strangest upbringing. So.
I didn't think that it was going to be normal. Okay.
Well, it's not even as simple as my grandmother just raised me either.
Hey.
Oh, I'm going to agitate her now. I can't.
Just push her off the table.
I like cats.
Just push her.
Oh, I don't want to. Girl, you pulling me? Okay, sorry. So yes, my grandmother, I lived with my grandparents. My grandfather died at 14. My grandmother died right after I had my daughter at 16. And it was just so strange. So I stayed with them throughout like my grade school years. I stayed at their apartment, but I didn't have a bedroom there. And then my mother at that time had a guy that she lived with, a longtime boyfriend, and she had a nice apartment, like a really nice apartment with nice stuff. And I had a bedroom there, and I had clothes and just toys and everything, like so much stuff there. But I was never there.
Right.
So I would go there sometimes, and there was nowhere to be bringing any of that to my grandmother's home or my grandparents' home at that time. They just didn't have the space for it. So it was just so weird. You know, it really created, I think, some insecurities in me as throughout like my childhood, because, you know, again, I really wore, like, I would wear the same clothes all the time because that was what was at my grandparents' house. But it's now looking back, it's just so strange because I had so many things that they just weren't where I lived.
Right.
And so that was just weird. But then, so come around the time I turned 11, and my mother, I would visit her mostly. I'd see her a lot more in the summertime, but she would just sleep all day, and I would run around the apartments on my bike with my Barbies in the basket, and just, I would do my own thing, and I loved it. But, you know, even when I was with her, really, she just was never around.
Yeah.
And so, it was, you know, it was strange, but it was what I knew, so it didn't really bother me so much at that time. But then when I got to turn around 11, she was really, I guess, hitting her worst time with like her drug problems and just everything, whatever. So she had broken up with that guy. And then something that I would learn, obviously, sometime after that about my mother is that she is not capable of adulting.
Right.
Which is partly why she didn't raise her child.
Sure.
Partly.
Yeah.
But she really can't. I mean, she was just enabled to the point that she, you know, probably still to this day cannot make a doctor's appointment. Can't call, and, you know, you have a phone, you have insurance or whatever, you know what I mean? You'd have all the stuff you need, but then she just can't do it. Like,
right.
Pay a bill, or, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like things like that are just, they don't come natural to her or easy. And so she's always had people just do for her and make, you know what I mean? It's like pity her. And so she knows exactly how to work that. She's a manipulator, genius at that. And so that's how she got by. But then when she hit that, you know, high point or low point, however you want to look at it, of her drug use, everything just came to a point. So then she moved back in with my grandparents. So then now we're all living together. And then she and I shared a room for a long time.
And you're how old at this age?
11.
Right. Okay.
And she wasn't there often. And again, even still to that point, when she would show up, she usually, her like head bleeding, like some guy had beat her up. And,
oh, geez.
Yeah, it was her boyfriend. Right. But, you know, now like back again, it's like, okay, those were her drug dealer boyfriend. You know, it was her drug dealer also.
Yeah.
And so just so crazy and weird. And so when my grandfather died, we took care of him. He had cancer. We had taken care of my grandmother's other ex-husband. He had cancer for 6 years. My grandfather had it for 4. And before they had passed, you know, they'd each passed. And the first guy, he actually passed after my grandfather. So he had it longer, and he lived a little bit longer. But they were both like terminal from the time they were diagnosed.
Right.
And so it was amazing that they lived as long as they did. But once my grandfather died, that just kind of was it really for a little bit for me. So I ended up moving out. I was 14. I moved out for the first time, and with my boyfriend at the time.
Holy cow. So when your grandparents die, you basically lose all of your support system.
Well, yeah, my grandfather, especially because my grandmother, to me, she obviously is just my grandmother, but she was not my mother's biological mom. So I think for her, there was she had something like, maybe that's kind of what my mother maybe held over her, or she kind of let everyone hold that over her, that she didn't want anyone to make her feel like she wasn't a part of something.
Right.
So she would give in, or she was, you know, she was a little bit softer, but my grandfather would just tell you how it is.
Right.
And oh gosh, they were both so wonderful and just characters though. But they absolutely made me who I am. And so for that, I'm just like, so, you know, I'm like, wow, I'm so thankful and appreciative that they were there. But at the same time, I see that unfortunately they created the problem that my mother had.
Yeah.
She had issues probably just on her own, but they always enabled her. And so, you know, but she always, I can still remember when my mother would get into it over like money probably, or who knows what, with my grandmother. She would always threaten to take me like away to take me, and so she would hold that over them for sure. Just weird things like that. So I know when my grandfather died, it just, everybody was kind of broken,
Yeah.
it just kind of like whatever. And so I met this guy. I told him that I was 16, which I wasn't. I was 14.
Oh, jeez.
Not a big difference. He was 21 or 20. Not a big difference.
Well, here's the difference,
There
Miranda.
is a difference. I get that.
There's a legal difference, is that 16 is the age of consent, and so it was technically
true.
statutory rape.
Well, okay.
Not technically
there's
it
that
was.
difference, but I'm just saying to the fact that if you're willing to date a 16-year-old and you're over 20,
Absolutely, yeah.
weird.
You're a pervert.
Yeah.
Right.
That's that.
I'm sure he was a gem of a human being, though, wasn't he?
Oh, he was. That was the guy. That was the only guy that's ever put his hands on me.
Right.
But he would. But again, I agitated it completely, knowing his temper too.
Well, being 14, you don't know any better.
In that position. Well, no, but just like I was telling you with middle school, I was mouthy.
Right.
I'm so surprised. Just every day of my life, someone hasn't come up and punched me right in my face, because I am mouthy, and I'm like, just like I am with myself, though. I mean, first of all, I'll make a joke of it if I want to, or if I see. I mean, if you're putting your business out there,
right?
What is it, a secret?
Yeah. So, what was how did you end up like? So they die, and then how do you?
Just my grandfather.
What's that? Well,
my grandmother wanted me to come home. She would always try to get me to come home.
Okay,
Sometimes
wait. So I'm confused then. So your grandfather died when you were 14.
Yeah, he died when I was 14. So I moved out for that. That was the first time I moved out. And so my mom and my grandmother, and then my grandmother's other ex-husband were still still all lived in that house.
Okay, so but you just
and my cousin did, and then she didn't so she did for a while.
So you made the decision to move out how long after he died?
Honestly, it was probably just a few months.
Okay. So you move in with the boyfriend, and of course your family wants you to come home because they're not, they realize this is not right. But what were you thinking moving in with a
Well, I mean, it just started out like I would just go and stay, you know what I mean, stay the night or whatever. Right. And we would drink or just whatever. And it's just so, well, because, okay, backtrack also. I mean, I did drink, and I did like a lot of like, not like, I did a lot of partying and stuff like that at such a young age. But also, I mean, when I was 11, my mother, because now she was back in the home, this is going to go all over, but she gave me like, she smoked weed with me for the first time when I was 11.
Oh, wow.
She would give me Valium. And like, again, I didn't even know what it was. You know what I mean? I didn't know what it was. I wasn't asking for it. But now looking back again, I get it, because I think the time that she smoked weed with me, I must have came out, and it was never a secret. Like my whole life growing up, when I was at her apartment, you could smell it in her bathroom, like where they grew it. But like, you know what I mean? It was never a secret. They didn't talk about it. Like I knew I wasn't supposed to talk about it, and they didn't talk about it with me, but like they didn't do it right in front of me, but I knew the smell and blah, blah, blah. But so she probably obviously wasn't supposed to be smoking it in my grandma's house. I'm sure my grandmother worked third shift. And so I'm guessing I walked in maybe while she was doing it in the living room. And so maybe she brought me in on it thinking like, okay, I wouldn't tell, because then I'd tell myself.
Yeah, right.
So, because you have to think she has such a weird mentality. And so, that at that point, then she would give me joints and stuff, like if I'd ask for it. So she would give me, and then she would give me the Valium and stuff, like, oh, here, you should take this. This is really good. Or, it's like weird. But now I get it, because she was downstairs smoking crack.
Ew.
So she didn't want me. I mean, again, not like I had a relationship with her. So every time, like, if she was around, I wanted to be around her. I wanted to talk. You know what I mean?
Like, so familially, like your parental figures were your grandparents, but like, how did you view her? Like, was she like an aunt to you? I mean, was there?
No,
she
because
was
that's
just some person?
I mean, no, she was my mom. I mean, she was my mom, and I wanted her to be around. You know what I mean?
Right.
And because it's like, again, from a child standpoint, up until the point that she had moved back. But again, she didn't say like, oh, I'm really bad on drugs now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
Everything. It was always somebody had done something to her and blah, blah, blah. But, she had that, based on where I lived and what I knew growing up, like she had a really nice apartment, and she had nice stuff. And, I had nice stuff there. And there was just like an association. And so like, I was just like, wow, you know what I mean? Like, I just wanted to, I guess I wanted to be there, or you know what I mean?
Right.
And like when my birthday is just like cursed. So, I mean, first of all, it's June 13th, so it does fall on a Friday sometimes. My first birthday was a Friday.
Wait a minute. You were born on Friday the 13th.
No, I was born on a Thursday, but my first birthday was a Friday the 13th.
Okay.
And so, you know, I don't know, it's just weird, but she would show up at all my birthday parties, like, and she would pay for them, you know, because she was a dancer and she made a lot of money. And she would, she would pay for the birthday parties and stuff, and then she would show up, whether it was at Chuck E. Cheese or my grandma's house or just whatever, and she just really didn't want to be there is really what it comes down to, again, because again, as a kid, I didn't understand it. She was always, like, every time she would start some huge fight with someone, with my pregnant aunt or my start a huge, I mean, it would get crazy. And so like every time, like, what the hell? And now again, I see back, like, she wanted to leave. She wanted an out, if you will. And she was just, her mind was so ate up that was better than just leaving.
Right.
To throw a fit and, ruin my whole party. Okay. No, could you just go next time?
Right.
But, she's crazy. But it's just weird. So she would ruin all my birthday parties every time. Swear to God.
What was the worst one?
Probably around 11, because I think she may have been because I know it was the house that she had moved back in. She may have been living there at that time, but my aunt was pregnant. It was when my aunt was pregnant with my cousin and her last baby, and started something with my grandmother. I don't know what over. At some point, my grandmother was crying. My mom was. Oh no, my grandmother had a baseball bat. My mom was fighting. Yeah, my mom was fighting with my pregnant aunt in her face. I mean, she's like probably 7-8 months pregnant. I mean, she probably shouldn't have even been at my party. You know what I mean? But yeah, she brought the kids because that's what family does. And you know what I mean? It's like my mom gets into it with her because she probably said something to my mom about maybe my mom wanted to, who knows?
Right.
And so she starts something with her, and it's like, they're just fighting. And she's like, my mom's threatening to kick her ass. This woman is pregnant. She's not my mom and my aunt couldn't be any further apart. Right. From looks down to personality, down to lifestyle. They're so opposite. And it was so wild. And I, because again, that was one of the pinnacle points of her drug problem too. Right. It's always something. So, oh gosh, I forgot how we even got off on
the worst fight. But yeah, your mom trying to beat up her 7-month pregnant sister. So I think what we ought to do is let's talk about your dad real quick.
Oh, well, okay. Well, I don't know him.
Yeah.
Thanks. Okay. No, honestly, again, but when you know how,
don't blame me.
No, not you, him. No, but again, when you think about now, it's like when I know my mother and the whole thing, it's like, okay, who knows the real story? Because I can tell you stories just about my mother for days. But so my father, I didn't know anything about him because, again, I was such a weird kid. I was such a Pollyanna. So I just you know what I mean? I would just I loved Mary Tyler Moore and just and I was just positive all the time.
Yeah, you were here the day that Mary Tyler Moore died, and she was like a second mom to you.
She was such a she was my number one female role model. I just love her. And it's just, really her personal life story is amazing also, just even off of the camera, what she's went through with her son Richie. He killed himself, or did he just die? I forget, but he passed away at a young age, early 20s. I think he killed himself. And just some of those things, it's just to think about her and how her spirit, because I just got that vibe from her. It was more than just her character. It was she really exuded from that. I don't know. So I did love her so much, but I didn't, as a kid, I don't know. Maybe it's coping also. I made the best of everything in my mind. And it's just a really weird thing. So my mother, I wanted her in my life, but she wasn't, you know what I mean? Yeah. And so my grandparents were fine. And then it was just weird. I knew all these people, and my mother actually had dated a guy from probably, I don't know, when I was like 2 maybe to like 4 or 5. Before she'd gotten with the other guy that she lived with long term. And she lived with that guy. And I remember even like some of what his place looked like. And I remembered being there as a small child, like my little pound puppies and just weird things that I remember about it.
Right.
But, and like the smells, that's weird. But it's just, I don't know, it's such an association. But that guy, I knew he wasn't my dad, but I would call him Jim. I never wondered about a dad. Like, it's so weird. I knew people that had dads, but I never even wondered. Like, I had my grandparents and I had them, and then I had that Jim guy. And then even though my mother was no longer with him, I continued to be with around his parents for a long time because they didn't have any other grandchildren, and they just adored me. And, so it was wonderful. They were, also a good, portion of my younger childhood that was very positive. But my dad, I had a dad. So when I was 7, I found out that he died. My mother, because she's a fucking idiot, I had no clue. There was nothing. I never asked. I didn't even think about it, promise. And so then she tells me, like, yeah, you have a dad, but he died. And so then I went to the funeral. Now, she obviously was not welcome at that funeral.
Right.
But so my dad, he was a lot older than her. And and he had couple of other children. So he had 2 other children. He had 2 daughters by 2 other women. And so he was married, I think, to both of those women, not at the same time. And then we're not polygamists. But then I know he was married when my mother got pregnant.
Right.
And so first of all, if I didn't have a strong resemblance to my sisters, I would say, knowing this girl, whose child am I?
Yeah.
I wouldn't have even believed her. If I was that guy, I'd been like, yeah, right.
So the one of his daughters, you look like her?
Actually, both. It was so weird. So when I went to the funeral, I met all these people that I had never known. And there was probably a little animosity, especially between the oldest sister's family and stuff. They are like Pentecostal weirdos. And I still remember some of that. And, it's just weird because that sister was probably around 18 at that time. Now, my other sister, she was probably around 14 or 15. I was 7. And so they were older than me, but the middle one, like, she looked just like me. I was like, wow, but she was like bigger boned because I was a tiny frame, and she wasn't fat or anything, but I just remember like her arms, like you could see the bones, but they were just like a lot bigger than mine. And I was like, oh wow, she looks just like me. But then flash forward to a time when I was pregnant, I was hanging out and I met this guy and he was like, wow, you look just like this girl I know, blah, blah, blah. It was my oldest sister. And he didn't even know any relation. And he was like, oh, you look just like this girl. And I was like, and then when he said the name, I was like, oh crap, that's my sister. I'm sure the guy was my dad, but he never saw me and I never saw him until he passed away. And then, it's just weird though, because again, I didn't need to be there. I didn't need that did not do anything. I didn't gain anything from it. I mean, I did have a short-term relationship with his twin sister. And all these people that were pretty decent in my life, like I'm pretty sure my mother ran them off at some point.
Yeah.
And so I don't really know why she stopped seeing me or anything like that, but I know that she did. And then out of nowhere, but she would pick me up and like help me with my school projects, my homework, and like just do things with me. And like then she was just gone. So it's just like, okay, something obviously had to have happened. Yeah. That was the only good thing that ever came from it, was that short time relationship with her. But other than that, I went to the funeral. I listened to those girls, cry and talk about how they had to open their Christmas presents, from their dad. And I'm like, well, I didn't even get a present. Like, I bet that does suck for you guys. Like, but it was just weird. And it's like, but when you're at a funeral, you're sad anyway.
But they were at his funeral, like saying he was a shitty dad.
No, they were saying like how sad they were that they were going to have to open presents from him and like think about him. And,
okay.
Yeah. And I'm just like, oh, well, that's nice that he was there for you guys. Cause I didn't know anything. I mean, I was just a kid. I was like, wow, that sucks that you guys knew him and I don't.
So we'll wrap up, and this is the final question for this episode, but is your mom still alive?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't talk to her.
Okay.
At all. I've had to block her eventually from social media. I tried to be cordial, but she always tries to tag me and tries to share and tries to do weird things on my pages and stuff, and I can't stand it.
Yeah.
I just can't. I'm like, I just can't stand fakeness from anyone about anything. I don't have it in me.
Yeah.
I really don't.
That's one of the things that I appreciate you, like you're just very real and honest, and like there is a character, but at the end of the day, like, you know, it's a character and you can tell you're joking and, you know, being sarcastic, but hey, you're not, you could be a huge phony and you're just not. Yeah,
no, exactly. See, that's just it. It's like I have such anxiety, and like having grown up with that strange upbringing and always having, you know, that feeling like I'm not good enough, and, you know, just whatever it is, like I'm weird, I'm different, you know, whatever. Because I couldn't have friends over when I was a kid like everybody else does, because I didn't have anywhere to be with them, you know, like we didn't have a place. And so it was just a very weird thing. I just couldn't do things like that everyone else did. And I felt like less because of it as I got older, and was more aware of it. So it created a lot of anxiety in me throughout like my early 20s and late teens, and always, especially being a young mom and, you know, trying to live up to what I felt like I was supposed to be. And I had I still do have a lot, but I had pretty more conservative views on things, especially then, just because that's what I thought, you know, having a young child, this is what I need to do, or this is what I need to, you know, have things be. And it's just, that would have eaten me alive and killed me if I would have continued on that path.
Yeah.
So eventually it hit a point where I was like, okay, I don't have this in me. Like I have to just keep it real, be honest, be me, and just not care. And I have to not care. Like there's no in between with anything with me.
Right.
So I'm like, if I don't though, I won't be able to go forward. And so for me, it's easier to live life that way. You don't have to worry about what did I tell this person, or, you know, keeping up with different stories and things and lies.
That's so exhausting. Like when you're trying to be a phony and you're trying to lie.
And if you're trying to please everyone, you're not going to match up to that. If you're trying to be someone else, you're not going to be better than that person. No one's a better Chris Spangle than Chris Spangle.
Exactly.
And so
it's
I
exhausting.
learned that. It is. It will kill you. And so being who I am as a person, and that I can go so hard if I'm focused on something, it's like I had to change my mindset and let that go and say, this is who I am. If people like it, they like it. If they tell lies about me, I don't care. You know what I mean? It's like, and unless something's directly affecting me, and then I'll handle that accordingly, you know, I don't care.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think this has been a good introduction. It's kind of laid the foundation. We'll try to make these about 30 minutes. And in the next episode, we're going to talk about what you do for a living. And don't spoil it, because next week, you people you're not even going to believe it, or you might. But it's fascinating, the psychology of what Miranda does for a living.
I'm a hustler, baby.
So tune on into that episode. Miranda, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Chris.
This has been fun, and please download this, share this with your friends and family, and people can, how do you spell your name? How can people add you on Facebook?
Yeah, it's Miranda, Maranda, Barnett, Barnett, aka baddest bitch. Leave that off. Facebook wouldn't allow it. And then my Snapchat is Princess Miranda, Maranda 1219. And I like to leave it all out there on my social media. Come follow me, guys.
All right, cool. Well, we will see you next week, and thank you for listening.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the We're Libertarians Network. Get our other shows at We'reLibertarians.com.